President, please be seated. The court is now in session. Before the chamber passes the floor through the defense team for the accused to put question to this witness, the chamber would like to remind the witness, Sos Kham Ri, that the chamber has received the notification or information about your health issue, and if you have any issue with your health, you can inform the chamber and ask the chamber to have a short break or adjourn the hearing in case that your health issue is serious. And if you are in good health, the hearing of your testimony will be perhaps concluded by 4 p.m. Do you understand that, Mr. Witness? Witness, yes, I do. President, thank you very much. And the floor is now given to the defense team for the accused, starting first from Nunjia defense team to put question to witness Sos Kham Ri. You may proceed now.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. I'll be asking you some questions this afternoon on behalf of our client, Nguyen Chia. In your statement to the investigators of the investigating judge, you said that you were the chairman, or you are the chairman of the highest council for Cambodia and Islamic religious affairs. Is that correct? And if yes, are you still in that position today?
Answer: yes, I am still in this position now today.
And would you be able to briefly explain to the chamber what the function is of this highest council for Cambodian and Islamic religious affairs? What is its tasks, and what are you doing?
The function of the highest council for Cambodia and Islamic religious affairs, the chairman has been appointed by the royal decree by the king, and I am assigned to coordinate and in charge of the disciplines of Islamic religion in Cambodia. And I am also in charge of the district level and commune level in relation to Islamic religion.
And can you tell us briefly what the main task is of the highest council? What is its purpose? Why does it exist?
Answer: in fact, in all countries there are religious leaders in the country, including Islamic religious leaders and other religious leaders. And the main task is to provide and guarantee disciplines to Islamic religion. And number 2 is to work on this religion and solve any issue arising out of Islamic community. And the leaders, I mean Islamic religious leaders, existed in the period before 1975 as well, and the religious leaders are now uh, working also in Cambodia.
Because of technical problems, I didn't get your answer, but that's all right. I will consult with my colleague. Are you one of Cambodia's highest Islamic leaders? Is that a fair summary of your position?
Answer: correct. I am one of the leaders, and I am the chairman of the Islamic leaders in Cambodia.
And I understand that another position of yours is being a general director of Cambodia Islamic Center, correct? And if yes, what are exactly the functions of the Cambodia Islamic Center?
In the past period, the royal government of Cambodia has tasked me to be in charge of the center, and that center is to provide religious trainings.
Religious training to whom?
Answer: to Islamic followers in Cambodia.
Would it be fair to say, if I would summarize, that you are one of the highest authorities within Cambodia when it comes to not only religious affairs but also interpretations of, for instance, provisions in the Quran or any other Islamic writings?
Answer: my role is to disseminate that holy book within the Islamic community, and also to protect Quran, the holy book.
My last question on your position. Because of your position, are you also able to give testimony or insights as to, for instance, how many Cham villages there are in Cambodia, how many Cham people approximately are now living in Cambodia, such questions?
Answer: we are not sure about the population of Islamic people or Cham people living in Cambodia, but perhaps there are more than 500,000 Cham people. So the number can be around 500 to 600 Cham people in Cambodia.
Now, Mr. Witness, if you allow me to ask you whether you would be able to tell us if it is correct that you initially did not want to testify in this court, that you were very reluctant to testify. Is that correct?
It has something to do with my health issue as far as everyone is concerned.
And is the health issue the only reason for not wanting to testify in this court?
Answer, that is correct.
Are you aware of communications from the Council for Islamic Religious Affairs, of which you are the president, to the court that forcing your appearance would lead to protests and violence within the Cham community?
នេះជារឿងត្រឹមត្រូវដែល
That is the correct statement. If it is necessary, there should be a protest.
I'm basing my question upon documents that we have about the contacts between you and the court. But why is it that the Council for Islamic Religious Affairs would fear violence if you were forced to testify? You are the president, maybe you can enlighten us a bit on this.
នេះជារឿងខុសហើយ
Answer, that is not correct. It is not my understanding. I have repeatedly told the court that it has something to do with my health issue.
Is it correct that you subsequently refused to undergo a medical assessment in order for the chamber to be able to assess your medical situation?
Answer, that is true. However, I have been constantly and monitored by the doctor, and the doctor examined me on many occasions, and I myself I am aware of my health issue more than the other is, and I have been to abroad to have my medical check, so it is no points to have further examination.
Mr. Witness, who is His Excellency Osman Hassan, advisor to Prime Minister Hun Sen? Who is he and do you know him?
Answer, please put question in relation to what I should provide my answer. Do not ask me about the issue of others.
Let me just then ask the question. Do you know whether Osman Hassan asked on your behalf whether you could as a witness could be replaced by someone else to testify?
Again, it is concerned with my health issue. I really want to testify what I have known, but if I cannot because of my health issue, that is another matter.
Now, in that same interview that you gave 7 or 8 years ago to the investigators, you say, Mr. President, on E3/5216, English ERN 00225495, Khmer 00223 and French 0023456 you're saying, and I quote you literally, "I don't necessarily take an oath before I speak unquote. Let me be complete. The whole sentence says as follows: since I am the chairman of the highest council for Cambodia and Islamic religious affairs, and the general director of Cambodia Islamic Center, and based on Islam religion, I don't necessarily take an oath before I speak, end of quote. Can you explain to me what it was that you meant with saying that? Why don't you necessarily take an oath before you speak?
Answer. It appears that I have told the court already. I told the court this morning, and perhaps you may have got what I said. There is the freedom in Islamic religion. Actually, there are two possibilities. Sometimes we may overstate, or we may not tell everything in detail. And I myself believe in the religion, and that is why I asked not to take a note. And in our religion, it is not absolutely required us to take an oath. And this is the role and function of the religious follower.
My final question on this issue, Mr. Witness. Do you agree with me that according to Islamic faith, a witness can only be considered to be under oath if he or she swears to tell the truth, swears in the name of Allah, peace be with him? If only in that situation he can be considered taking a declaration or making a statement under oath.
That is also the freedom of Islamic follower, whether or not they want to take a note. The religion, Islamic religion, does not require an individual in Islamic community to take a note absolutely. It depends on their will.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Witness. I will move on to the next subject, and that is the number of Cham people that live now in Cambodia, but also after 79. At various moments in your testimony, you say that, according to you, after 79, about 300,000 Chams were still living in Cambodia. Is that correct? And if yes, what is the source for this figure? Where did you base yourself upon? How did you come to the 300,000?
Answer. That was the estimate. We did not conduct the actual census at the time. That is why I do not want to take a note. We examined the population in villages, and after that we came to an estimate about that rough number. So no one is known for sure about the exact figure of Cham people living after that period. That is why I asked not to take a note.
Do you know whether there was a population count or a sort of census in 1982 here in Cambodia, and the number of 180,000 Cham, 182,000 Cham came up? Are you aware of that figure?
Answer: I am not aware of that. At the time, I was living in my village, and I was not going anywhere to get the information about that.
In your statement to Isa Osman, you're saying that according to those who remember, there were about 700,000 Cham in Cambodia before 1975. Can you explain to us how exactly those people that you talked to came to that figure? Did they tell you?
នោះក៏ជា
That was also the estimate from Sangkum Risniyum based on the population in villages. We did not have the exact figure from that period as well.
But do you know how the people that you spoke to came to that estimate? Why 700,000? Did they do some calculation, or can you give us some more details as to this figure of 700,000?
Answer: when we did not have specific basis to rely on, that is why people came to different estimates. And from my estimate, the population was from 400,000. So it depended on those who came to their own estimate.
Are you aware of the fact that international scholars, American or Australian, are giving numbers of the total Cham population before 75, which are dramatically lower than the 700,000 that you mentioned?
Answer: that is not true.
Let me be more specific. There's an American scholar who says that before 1975 there might have been roughly 190,000 Cham, and an Australian scholar, Kiernan, saying approximately 250,000 Cham in 75.
Council, just for completeness, now we need the reference, since you are so specific.
It's the same document that I used when questioning expert Osman, E3/9382, I believe. It's actually also mentioned in E3/9701, which is an article by Eva Osman in the Phnom Penh Post, in which Osman actually quotes this witness as his main source. Mr. Witness, do you have a reason, or can you explain to us why there is such a difference between what scholars seem to estimate based on the various census and your sources? There seems to be a difference of almost 500,000 people. Can you explain that?
Answer: now I asked for I ask for your consideration. Currently in Bông Khmum province, one village consists of 1,000 families, and there are three villages: Proches, Tria, and another village. So if we do the calculation to altogether 1,000 families in one village, so I believe that the population of Cham people is high, is in large number. So if we then do the calculation to add up all families in all villages, then there are perhaps 1 million Cham people living in the country.
There seems to be also a very big difference in numbers when it comes to possible deaths in relation to the Cham during decay. This American scholar estimates about 11,000 Cham being killed. This Australian scholar talks about 77,000 Cham being killed, and you say about 400,000 Cham were killed. Can you explain that difference?
Sorry, counsel again. Which scholar and where?
Vickery is talking about 10,710. Keenan, Ben Keenan, 77,000. And he himself, according to Osman, talks about 400,000. So
And where?
E3/9701. It's the evidence actually of Osman, and it's the same document that I referred to earlier. It's the article of Michael Vickery relating the figures and statistics of Keenan, and the Phnom Penh Post article of Osman. That's a post article on 10 March 2006, E3/9701, English ERN 011995557 and 558. Khmer 0126400 and 01. So again, we have an American scholar, Michael Vickery. We have an Australian scholar, Ben Kiernan, who give dramatically different figures in terms of casualties than you. So my question is, also in relation to the position that you have, can you explain that big difference in numbers?
I think after the liberation, I went around and observed villages. Many Cham people died, and there were small numbers of Cham people survived the regime. Cham people died. They were from different villages, so it depended on the small or big villages. So Cham people, 50% of Cham people may have died. This is based on my estimate and also based on my actual observation. We cannot go to one individual to ask specifically about that issue. And the regime lasted for almost 4 years, 3 years, 8 months, and 20 days, and the birth rate is also high after that period. Was also high after that period. So the death toll perhaps may have a higher number, and also the birth rate may have a higher number as well.
last question on this. You yourself said after 79 that there were about 300,000 Cham still living. How did you, in the light of what you just said, come to that actual number? Did you go to all villages in Cambodia, also other villages? Did you go to Phnom Penh? How was that number reached, 300,000?
I went to most of the villages since I was one of the religious teachers, and I was invited to attend many meetings to disseminate religious information. So I went to say 70 to 80% of the Cham villages throughout the country.
And that's how you reached the number of 300,000.
Yes, that is correct.
Let me now move on to your testimony into what was said during a certain meeting and what you subsequently may have read. It is a bit unclear to me when you were asked questions about a meeting during which the fate of Cham was allegedly discussed. What year that was? When exactly was it? Was it in November 78, as you say somewhere? Was it in 77? Was it in early 78? Do you remember?
ដោយខ្ញុំ
As I stated this morning, I've attended several meetings at a time. I also took children to work, and there were meetings where people from different levels attended those meetings. For that reason, I cannot recall specific details regarding each meeting.
I understand. But at one point you're saying November 78, and in another statement you're saying 77 or early 78. Can you tell us what it was? Early 78, late 78, late 77? What was it?
ខ្ញុំទៅវិជុំហ្នឹង
I attended those meetings around 1977, but I cannot recall whether it was in early or late 77. As I went to that area in early 77 and I returned in early 78.
Have you ever heard of a person called Mat Lee?
During the Pol Pot regime, I did not know him, and I heard of his name only after the Liberation Day.
So you never spoke to him after 1979?
After 1979, I rather frequently met with him.
Okay, can you tell us something about the nature of your conversations with Mat Lee?
It was a casual conversation, and at that time I did not speak to him on any specific subject.
Did he tell you when he spoke to you what his functions were during the DK regime? What positions he held in the former East Zone?
No, I was not aware of that. He never told me about it.
Have you heard of a person called Uk Bun Chun, who is presently a member of the Senate in Cambodia?
No, I never heard of that name.
So, following this, you also do not know what his function was in the East Zone between 75 and 79, correct?
As I stated earlier, during the regime, it was prohibited to walk freely, and that happened to everybody. So I did not know any specific positions that he held.
I'll get back to Matli later, but now let me return to the document you said you saw. This morning you were not able to give details about a document or a small book or booklet that discusses the fate of the Cham. But I'm asking you again, what do you remember about having seen a small booklet called The Plan for Progressive Cooperatives? What do you remember?
As I stated this morning, I was assigned to measure land. I did not know whether they wanted to draw a sketch or not. And when I arrived in the area, the chief there was not there, and only the messenger was there. So I asked the messenger if he had any book or document so that I could read to pass the time. And I was given that book, which discussed about the enemy situation.
And in your statement to the investigators of the OCIJ, English ERN 00225497, Khmer 223893, and French 00234570 and 71, you're saying it was a light yellow book, a book with a light yellow cover, and it was small and it had 16 pages. Is that what you said? Is that correct? Is that your recollection?
I was not 100% sure that it was a light yellow cover. This is not 100% certain, and I believe I recall it that the title for the book was The Plan for Progressive Cooperatives. I did not read the entire booklet. I only read the section about the enemy situation concerning the Cham people.
And how do you remember it was 16 pages?
Because it was rather thin and the size was small.
And according to your WRI, you remember reading, quote unquote, Cham is the biggest enemy who must be totally smashed before 1980. And then you say, I was scared and not dare to read any further, so I took it back to its original place. Is that what you said to the investigators and to Isa Osman?
ថង
I was not sure about the year that you quoted, but I am sure about the plans to kill the Cham people. And I can only tell you what I am certain of. I did not know whether the author of that book exaggerated or not, but that was what I recall.
And was it a young messenger who gave you that little booklet?
No, he did not hand me the book. He actually gave me a whole bunch of books and documents, and I picked one, and that was the book that I picked.
Did you have the impression when you got this pile of books that those books were somehow secret, or because apparently he gave you the books just for you to pass some time, correct?
Yes, that is correct, and of course I did not have any intention to want to know about this matter. However, it happens that I read that book. I was only wanting to read something to pass the time.
And where did this messenger get this pile of books from? Where was this pile of books in the office?
The books were from the office of his superior. And in fact, I went to the superior's office that I was meant to work there.
Did you ever speak to Mat Lee about the existence of this little 16-page booklet?
No, I never spoke to him about that.
Did you speak to anyone else except the investigators of the court and Isa Osman about the existence of this little book?
I used to speak casually with my friends about the book, but not to anybody else.
Do you have an explanation, Mr. Witness, as to why you are literally the only person in the case file, or at all, to speak about this little book and its content in relation to the charm? In other words, do you have an explanation as to why Mat Lee, who had a high function in 77, doesn't know anything about this little book?
I would just note an observation that, in fact, in Kiernan's book, he talks about two different sources who saw document 163, which contains a similar plan. And we have had testimony about a plan to kill all the Cham from other witnesses who were present and heard that. We've had several witnesses talk about that.
That's incorrect, Mr. President. There's no other witness, there's no evidence whatsoever on the case file that speaks about a booklet called The Plan for Progressive Cooperatives. But let me rephrase, Mr. Witness. Mat Lee had a high-ranking function within the East Zone in 78. He left Cambodia in May 78, presumably. Um, are you in a position to explain as to why the highest ranking Cham person, Mat Lee, doesn't speak at all about a little booklet containing a plan to smash the Cham, of which he was, as I said, the most high-ranking member?
Council, to me this sounds like an invitation to speculate. Tell me why it isn't, why it wouldn't be.
I'll rephrase. Isn't it true, Mr. Witness, that you never saw such a little book and that you never saw a sentence in it saying that the biggest enemy was the Cham and that they had to be smashed totally before 1980?
Initially, you wanted me to take an oath, and now you wanted me to say something that I saw, and that you want to say something that I didn't see. I am here to tell the truth, and I saw the book, and I could not say anything else about what they did to the book, about why they wrote the book. And at that time, I did not know Mat Lee. What else you want me to say about the book and Mat Lee?
Let me ask you very concrete, and please do not be offended when I ask the question, but the fact that you're not taking an oath, is that because of this particular answer? That in fact you didn't see that little booklet, but you are afraid to say so under oath?
Here, I don't think we need to use the word afraid, because here we are talking about the truth. And I only say about what I saw, what I heard of, and besides that, I do not know what else to tell you in my capacity as a religious follower.
Let me turn to the meeting that you said you were present. You said that at a meeting you also heard cadres talk about enemies. Is my understanding correct that at this meeting there was no specific reference to Cham?
It is true that during the regime, any meeting would discuss about the issue of the enemy, and it was a normal topic of the meetings. In addition, I made my personal conclusion in relation to the killing of the Cham people and the Khmer people, and my conclusion was that more Cham people had been killed amongst the Cham community, and I could say that 70 to 80% of Cham people had been evacuated from their native villages.
When you were at this meeting that you said people spoke about enemies, and when you read that little booklet containing that particular phrase, were you still teaching? Were you still a teacher?
After I heard what is said at the meeting, I was reassigned to return to my village. As for the book, I believe I read it in about October of 1978. So here we refer to a different time period.
just to be sure, are you now, maybe I'm mistaken, but are you now changing the event of you seeing that little book to October 78 rather than late 77?
I do not get your question.
Well, you might remember that about 20 minutes ago I asked you when it was that you read this little booklet and when it was that you had this meeting. It was my understanding, but please correct me if I'm wrong, that you said you saw that little booklet end of 77, early 78. Is that correct, or are you now saying that you saw that little book in October 78?
It was in late 1978 when I saw that book. However, I returned from Jeju in early 1978.
But when was it exactly that you stopped being a religious teacher?
In relation to the religious affairs, in fact, I stopped my religious teaching in 1975 when it was prohibited.
Well, let me read to you what you said to Isa Osman, document D 175/3.43. English page 5. Let me get the Khmer in later for you, Mr. President. You say, and I quote, "I have to add that in 1977 or early 78, I was still teaching, even though my mandate had expired."
Honorable Counsel is confusing teaching and teaching religion. It's clear the witness has consistently said all day that he taught religion was prohibited after 75, but he continued to teach limited classes to children under the Khmer Rouge regime.
No problem, Mr. President. Let me clarify. When you said that you were still teaching late 77, early 78, was that religious affairs or was it just to children? And if yes, was it still at the same place where you used to be a religious teacher?
I stated this morning that I taught Khmer literature and religion in 1973. However, in 1975, I could no longer teach religious teaching. I could only teach Khmer literature, since the Cham people or the Cham children or the Khmer children had to study Khmer alphabets. And when I was in Jeju, I only taught Khmer lessons to the children, since religious teaching was banned in 1975.
But were you teaching in the same place, in the same building? What I want to know is how you were able to conceal, when you were teaching in 77 or 78, that before you had been teaching religion or religious matters.
I have already stated I stopped my religious teaching in 1975, and after that I only taught Khmer literature. I went to Jeju for a year, and I returned from Jeju in early 1978.
So the moment that you saw this little booklet, it was unknown to the commune chief that you had been teaching religious studies before. Is that correct?
After I stopped teaching, and that is in early 1978, I was assigned to transport firewood to the office. Then, in late 1978, I was assigned to measure land in other villages, and that was the time that I happened to see that little booklet.
And is the only means that you used to conceal your Cham identity was the changing of your name, or were there also other things that you did in order to conceal your Cham identity?
In fact, after my return to my native village, I was still known as a Cham person. From my recollection, in early or mid 1978, the killing was postponed, and there was no longer any research into the background of the villagers living there, and that continued until 1978. And during that period, I was assigned to measure land, and local people there still recognize me as a Cham person.
Let me turn to my last subject, Mr. Witness. In your interview with Isa Osman, you speak about the rebellion in Kopal and Svai Kleng in 1975. What is it that you know about this rebellion in 75?
I am not sure about that. I only heard of that matter, that they rebelled, but I did not know the details about the rebellion, and since I did not know for certain, I do not wish to speak about this.
Let me read to you what you said in your interview to Isa Osman, D175/3.43. It's English page 8. You said that the Khmer Rouge retaliated violently against the insurgents. In Kopal, the Khmer Rouge massacred almost the entire population and brutally dispersed the few survivors to remote villages. End of quote. How did you know this? Who told you this?
At that time, I did not see Kopal. I only heard about the people who came across me and spoke about it. And then I referred those people to Kopal, and I told them about what I heard, about what happened in Kopal.
Have you also heard anything as to those who might be responsible for the crushing of this rebellion? Which Khmer Rouge cadres were possibly responsible for the crushing of this rebellion and, as you call it, the massacres of the entire population? Have you ever heard that?
No.
Have you ever heard anything of involvement of people who are presently in the government in relation to the crushing of this rebellion?
Answer: I have never heard of it.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Thank you, Mr. President. My national colleague has a few questions as well.
Liv Savannah. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, the bench, judges on the bench. Good afternoon, everyone in and around the courtroom. Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. I am the co-lawyer for Nguyen Chia. I have several questions to put to you. Through your observation of Chamkale district, besides Pu village, where did Cham people reside? Answer: there was another small village, Old Krai village. It was to the east and was about 4 kilometers apart. Question: do you know how many Cham families are living in that small village? Answer: it is my estimate that not more than 50 families were living in that small village in Sangkum Niyum regime. Question: this morning you stated that you attended the wedding ceremony during the Khmer Rouge time 1 or 2 times. Through your observation, did Cham people get married in democratic Cambodia? Answer: I can recall that after I was there, Cham people were asked to marry one another based on the instruction of Angka, and I was the last couple who got married based on the ritual ceremonies. Question: was there a ban that Cham people were not allowed to get married to one another but to Khmer people? Answer: there was no such a ban. Cham people could marry one another. I refer to Cham people who were living in villages, but I do not know whether that was applicable as well in offices. Lawyer: thank you. You were a teacher in the democratic Cambodia before you were moved to Jeyo. You were teaching children of Cham people in Spu. Besides your teaching duties, was there any discrimination, in the trainings or the classes that you provided through Cham people and Khmer people? Answer: in fact, the children that I taught received the same education. And the children of Khmer people in Jeyo loved me more than the children of Cham people. Lawyer: this morning you stated that you moved to Jeyo alone. What about your wife and children? Did they remain living in Spu after you moved to Jeyo? Or did they move to any other place? Answer. At the time, I had 2 daughters. So I could visit my house once in a fortnight and once in 10 days. So my wife and my 2 daughters remained living in Spur. Question. The 50 Cham families in Spur. You stated that some families had been evacuated and only 50 families remained living in Spur. And did they remain living in Spur until the end of the regime, or did they move to some other places? Answer. After the evacuation of some Cham families, more than 50 Cham families remained living in that village. People from Phnom Penh had been evacuated as well to that village, to live in that village. The evacuation of Cham people had been transferred before 1975, and between 20 to 30 families from Phnom Penh were sent to live in that village, and later on some families had been killed. Question. What was the reason that some Cham families were killed? Answer. No one knows the reason for the killings. Because of that, everyone was afraid to be killed. So those people were waiting and expect and hopes that their life would be spared. We live very fearfully. Question. In DK, Democratic Cambodia, what was the nationality or ethnicity of the chief of Spur village? Answer. After the evacuation, the leaders mostly were Cham, and later on most of them met very unfortunate fates, and most of them were almost killed. Question. After they were killed, who became the leader of Spur village? Answer. After the killings, new faces had been replaced. Question. Were they Cham or were they Khmer from other area? Answer. These new people were Cham. However, there were 2 others who came to monitor the new leader. Later on, the 2 observers were also killed. Question. So you mean there were purchased in your village, or there weren't? That's why Cham people could live and survive the regime. Answer. First, evacuation took place in a large scale before the fall of Phnom Penh. Killings happened at the places where people were being evacuated. Killings at Spur happened at a later stage. So I do not know about the plan to purge the entire village of Cham people or not. Later on, in late 1978, the killings stopped, and until then, 5 or 6 months later, the liberation occurred. President, thank you very much. Now it is a break time. The chamber will take the break from now until 3 p.m. Court officer, please assist this witness in the waiting room during the break time, and please invite him back into the courtroom at 3 p.m.